tough economic shocks to Kamala Harris's campaign is quickly turning into a win for the vice president. First, there is the unexpectedly strong labor market, showing 254,000 new jobs were added last month and unemployment dropping to 4.1%. Also, thousands of port workers settling a massive strike just days after walking off the job, averting a deep economic impact. Let's get some more analysis now with Catherine Rampell. She's a CNN economics and political commentator and Washington Post opinion columnist. Catherine, good to see you as always. What we were hearing towards the end of this past week, people were starting to panic buy toilet paper and they were worried about this port worker
Yes.
strike. That was sort of ridiculous that people were doing that, but people were doing that. So that didn't look good from economic or political standpoint for the vice president. And then these jobs numbers came in. What did you make of all that?
It's been great news. Great news for the economy, certainly. Not only because we will not potentially have the kinds of supply chain disruptions that people were fearing, and that we so far, knock on wood, seem to be headed toward a soft landing for the U.S. economy, meaning that we are in the process of beating back inflation without having a dreaded recession so far. All great news for the economy, all great news for the American people, but as you point out, also quite welcome news for the Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, who has been sort of playing this, doing this dance where she half owns what's going on with the economy and half wants to avoid it because people are still pretty bummed about how the economy is doing, even as we get these relatively good numbers.
Yeah, I remember when I covered the Romney-Obama race in 2012, and we were still coming out of the Great Recession, and as the unemployment rate was ticking down, you sort of felt like Barack Obama's re-election prospects were going up. But it seems this time around, folks maybe aren't as focused on what the unemployment rate is. They tell us this anecdotally that they're just much more concerned about inflation, even though the numbers show that coming down. What's your sense of all of that in terms of maybe that's muting what might be more of a win for Kamala Harris?
I actually think the 2012 race is a very useful metaphor, the one that you just brought up, because at the time, as you may recall, about a year out of the election, Barack Obama, who was running for re-election, had these really poor job approval ratings.
Right.
It looked like he potentially had an uphill battle to go in his race against Mitt Romney. And the conventional wisdom at the time was that poor views of the economy were really weighing on his job approval. But not only did the economy recover, but eventually consumer sentiment kind of caught up to it. We're not quite there yet, but it does look like in the past few months, consumer sentiment, views of the economy have been gradually improving. They're still relatively dour, at least in connection with what the hard data look like. Again, those not relatively good, great jobs numbers, cooling inflation, strong GDP growth, et cetera. But it does seem like consumers are at least a little bit less grouchy about the economy than they once were. I don't think the economy is ever going to be a winning issue per se for Kamala Harris because she does represent the incumbent party, but I think it may be less of an albatross around her neck going forward.
Yeah, typically a 4.1 unemployment rate is really good news for
absolutely, it's fantastic.
Part of the administration.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it all breaks down, and maybe the interest rate news might also have some effect on all of this as we get close to Election Day. Catherine Rampell, great to see you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.